So, hello Padmayogini, nice to see you. Thanks very much for agreeing to talk to me today. Of course, we know each other from before, from London, when we worked in, I think, 2 right livelihood businesses, or 2 rolled into one. And more recently, we were having some conversations, which I found fascinating. I thought you had some really interesting things to say about Triratna, and about Triratna in terms of it being a mandala.
Yeah.
And yes, I think I'll just let you take it away, really. So the idea is we start off talking about mandala, what a mandala is, and how you see Triratna's mandala.
Yeah, thanks, Vajradakini. Yes, I remember our time at the London Buddhist Centre, working our team-based right livelihoods.
Yeah,
really interesting. Quite a few years ago now.
It is.
But I wanted to talk about mandala principle as I understand it. And mandala has become a way for me to understand my practice as well, I suppose, a way of working a bit more on the sort of energetic levels. So I found that actually very helpful. So it sort of understands the sort of forces and the energies and the sort of patterns, if you like, the patterns that form in our lives. And mandalas, we're part of many, many mandalas in our lifetime. So I find it a good way to talk about experience in general. And if you like, to start with, we have a mandala of our own physical body, our sort of mind, heart, health, and so on. A mandala includes our practice, our Buddhist practice, a mandala of our family, a mandala of our work, all sorts of mandalas which we step in and out of at various times. And obviously for myself, it's thinking about my practice mandala, but then also Triratna mandala for Triratna. And you can think of mandalas again, I suppose. They are shunya, they are empty. They can be thought of as made of rainbow light, if you like, but in a sense they're insubstantial, but they form these continuous patterns of movement. They can also overlap, and you can also have sub-mandalas within mandalas. And I think we've had some sort of sense of mandalas in Triratna. So we've talked a bit about the centre of the mandala and the periphery of the mandala. Although perhaps I should say at the start, it isn't linear. The sort of mandala isn't sort of linear in that sense, so it's not quite as simple as that. And one of the ways I've thought about mandala in terms of understanding a mandala we can step in and out to was in regard, say, to a mandala of speed, creating a mandala of speed in our life, which is probably quite common for a lot of us, where we have somewhere to go and we may not have quite realised the time, and so we need to get somewhere a bit quickly. So in our mind, if you like, we start with this intention. So mandala is formed by intention. We have this intention to sort of hurry up, not be late, to get somewhere that we want to go. And so if you like, once we've created that mandala, it starts coming into action. It's helping us achieve our intentions, which is to speed up. But suddenly we find that the messengers and the guardians are saying to us, hurry up, come on now, you'll be late, do this, do that. And all of it can become, to that sort of degree, unhelpful degree, the old sort of like proverb, more haste, less speed. We can find we're literally caught in this speedy mental mandala, and everything around us is conspiring, as it were, to make it quite often seemingly worse than better. But at some point we recognise that. So at some point we recognise what's happened. And so we step out of that mandala, if you like. So we're like, okay, we realise. And that mandala then dissolves, if you like, it dissolves away. So, in that sense, mandalas can be created literally in the moment. So they operate on all these other levels, as it were, and all these other ways or sizes, I suppose, if you like, creating or substantiality to that degree that they are shunya. So in our practice mandala, that powered, if you like, the center of our practice mandala is powered by our heart wish, by our sort of intention. And with the Dharma, that could well be that we resonate with the idea of the Bodhisattva vow. Maybe you resonate with just awakening some idea of not suffering, being a benefit. There's something that's there that powers, if you like, our sense of what we want in the Dharma and our intentions. And then we reinforce the mandala by coming back to those original intentions. So they're what's important, what we've set up there. And so that way we also empower the guardians. The guardians in a mandala arise out of our heart intentions, out of the center, out of that center principle. And therefore, if we have the intention, say if we're meditating and we have set the intention, that's reinforced our own mandala with the idea of practice, then the guardians will be the voices which tell us you've drifted off, where have you gone now, that's not what you wanted to do. They'll be the guardians actually calling us back to practice, if you like. It's a way of understanding that.
That's fascinating. I was thinking only today, actually, that in some ways being given a name at ordination can be a bit like that, can't it? To sort of, in as much as it can be a practice or an inspirational, there is that aspect to it, as well as it describing something of the ordinary. I certainly found my name inspiring as a practice, particularly when Ramadina translated it for me. I think she was helping me not be too big-headed or something. To say, you could translate it as shunyata, shunyata, you know.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because you're right, you could, in a way, our names could also be a mandala of themselves in that sense. We step into, that's right, our name, or how do we step into our name? What that means. Part of that too. Yeah. So mandalas, so they have the sort of, on a basic level, they have the sort of center, and they have a periphery, they have gates, and they have messengers, and they have guardians. And then once set up, a mandala is sort of seeking, as I say, originally, is seeking to fulfill our sort of heart wish, our intentions. And also in that sense, it's seeking a certain equilibrium, but it's not at all static. So it's not like a mandala we see painted in a Tibetan tanka. So it's very much this sort of active form. And it's, if you like, one of my senses of it is seeing it as a kaleidoscope, as a child's kaleidoscope, which I used to love as a child. And it's where you're sort of, but in a sort of continuous momentum. So the sort of all these beautiful colours, these beautiful crystals are being shaken up, jewels being shaken up, when they land in this amazing pattern. But then immediately you can shake them up again. If you like, that's a sense of the mandala for me, that whatever actions we're doing, there's this constant shaking of the jewels and then falling of into something harmonious and beautiful. But of course, if the mandala is not, in alignment, if it's not working well, then those patterns will not, be those harmonious, beautiful ones. So
that's beautiful.
I think for us, moving on to sort of the Triratna mandala, then I was thinking, obviously, it was Sangharakshita who founded the order, set the original mandala up in motion. So I was thinking, what are those original heart wishes, or those original intentions that would be at the heart of the mandala? Is that those would be what powers the mandala and keep powering the mandala. And so in our case, I'd found a number of things, and one of them was the Bodhisattva path, or Bodhisattva vow with bodhicitta, that desire to benefit all beings. Going for refuge, which may be part of that. Being ecumenical, really important, so drawing from all the strands, all the schools of the Dharma of Buddhism. So I think Sangharakshita definitely clearly seen, if you like, that they all come from one original source. And so it's actually, you didn't have to just align yourself with one very particular school or teachings.
Yes.
Then we have, of course, spiritual friendship, neither monastic nor lay. And then I think quite importantly, this bringing the Dharma to the West, so establishing the Dharma in some form that could be understood. Because in those days, of course, there wasn't so much, there wasn't very, very little Dharma, I suppose, coming through in those early days. So that's a sort of, for me, I see those as the central part of our mandala. And I definitely resonated with quite a lot of that. And I think all of us that are drawn into the Triratna mandala are resonating with one or more of those intentions, if not all of them. There'll be something which we've been drawn to, which keeps still in the mandala.
Great point. Yes.
Yeah, and then once we're part of the mandala, if you like, we're there with with bonds, if you like, so samaya bonds. But in the case of the mandala, it will be things. It'll be that sense of trust. Actually, I think that's why people probably mentioning trust quite often now. We're here on a sort of, we can be trusted, trusted to keep our word. Our word is our bond, and that we share conventions. So the mandala will have conventions, understandings, which will be based on those original intentions. And also within that, it's also that we co-create the mandala. So we're not static within a mandala. So in those patterns I'm talking about, in the kaleidoscope, you know, we're one of those little jewels that's continuously moving and making a pattern mandala. So again, if a mandala is operating well, all of us understand, and we all have, you know, this co-creation, the sense that we're keeping the mandala there. We're also sharing in holding the lineage to the degree that we're able to do that. And also we're also a mandala is also about energy exchange. So if, in that sense, again, if it's working well, then our energies will also be reciprocated. We'll have a share of energy energetically, because it's, in a way, the mandala is energy in that one sense as well. So all of those things, and for us, our bonds will also include the precepts. So there'll be those quite strong ethical considerations, and in a way held to the highest form with the bodhisattva vow and path there at the heart. Then in a way, you know, we've got quite tough levels that we're sort of like held to account to, in that sort of ideal form.
So what could go wrong, in a sense? I mean, that sounds like quite a lot in common we have. The surprising array.
I think in a sense, as I start to say things, you can see where I think there are already problems, yeah, within the mandala. And I think particularly may have come to the surface at the moment is the ethical behaviour. So the sort of breaking of the precepts or people's behaviour that's not been as ideal or held to the conventions that we might want, the way we treat people, the way we understand, and so on. And if somebody actually breaks the precepts or acts in a way that's counter to the shared values or even the principal central heart wish of the mandala, then we all feel it. So the way that we feel that things are a problem in the mandala is usually emotionally. So most people can't see the energies or see anything else, as it were, within the mandala. So it's a bit different for me, because I can see, if you like, more clearly on those sort of inner levels of things. But for most people, it'll be emotionality. They'll feel something's not quite right. There'll be a disturbance that we feel, and the degree to which we're open is the degree to which we'll feel that, in a sense. But there may be feelings of unease or disquiet, or people might actually be, and you could say the guardians are acting in this way with them. It may be that some people literally do try and find out, try and sort of ferret out, try and actually understand, find out why it is the mandala, you know, feels it doesn't feel right in that sense. And so if we've actually gone against the wishes of the mandala, gone against the bonds or the precepts, even unknowingly, it's important, I suppose. That's where you know it is up to the other people to point that out. Then you know we need to confess, and we need to apologise, and we need to see if we need to make amends. But the important thing with that is that the apology, the acceptance of the apology, is actually rests with the rest of the people in the mandala. So it's not that we can just apologise and then everything's okay. If you like, because of the way the mandala works, we all have to feel that we share in the similar bonds and ways of being in the mandala. And so, if you like, we need to understand that the person who's acted against those also understands that, and actually, you know, understands why, and actually that they are back in the mandala, if you like, in that shared understanding.
If I may interject there, I mean, that does follow the standard recommendation of the Buddha, doesn't it, to how to confess that it is something that is understood, etc. And that, you know, it's fully recognised what has been done and how you can make amends and so on. But I'm interested how you know, and many people, as you say, would feel that discordance if it's not right on an emotional level. But you mentioned that you see it differently, and reminded me that you do have a very particular practice. You have a strong visionary aspect, and I know this evolved from talking to you about meditation practice and about connections we share, actually, some of them, with Padmasambhava and so on. So I just wondered if it might help to say a little bit about how you see those disturbances when they occur from ethical or other sources.
Yes, I suppose in a sense it's just having a general sense of the mandala. So I think because of my connections, you said, with Padmasambhava, with Dogon Khyentse Rinpoche, with the lineage, that those whole things, in a way, I suppose I have an overview sense as well. So there is a certain sense of that, and for me, it'll be, it's hard to describe really, but it is, there is a sort of sense of what's true and what's not true, and how things need to be, perhaps more than that. So a strong sense of actually how things need for it to work, probably coming more from that end. How does it need to work?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry if I took you off your stride there.
Hopefully I'll talk a lot more about my practice, perhaps in another video on other occasions. I think it is interesting.
Would be fascinating, yeah.
And I have not been public about that because Sangharakshita originally told me to keep it secret, really, to keep the way I practice and understand secret publicly, in that sense.
Yes.
So back to the mandala. So if you like, once the sort of we've heard confessions, people apologize, it's been accepted, then if you like, the mandala quietens down, if you like, as it were, quietens down, and those patterns settle. But of course, in our case, I think we still have difficulties in that area, because in a way there still isn't, I feel there's a lack of clarity still. The messengers are still trying to clarify what exactly has happened historically, or even if there's anything happening now to do with all those areas which we understand, which are to do with position of women, are to do with sexual conduct, you know, those sort of aspects that I feel there still isn't clarity in all those areas. So the mandala is still waiting for that clarity, if you like.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. But one of the strengths, if you like, so I think there's a huge amount of strengths in our mandala, that is what gives me sort of confidence, if you like, for how we are in our mandala, is that it is powered by this vast potential lineage. Because one of these founding intentions, being about bringing the strands of Buddhism, the schools and teachings together, has come through the mandala. So I have absolutely no doubt about that with Sangharakshita, if you like, this came through very, very strongly. And that means that we have potentially access to whatever teachings we need, or, you know, whatever temperament, whatever personality type, then they're there. So my problem, seeing the problem again now with that, is that I see attempts to close down those potentialities with the publications of the 7 papers, and, you know, discussions over the last, I don't know how many, 9 years, particularly leading up. And that very much concerned me right from the beginning of those ideas coming out. Was, again, I felt this closing down, this shutting down, and, if you like, a certain degree of the removing the prominence, or not really valuing again something about those original connections and that sort of heart wish. So from that point of view, I actually see that the insight teachings that are coming into the movement as being something that the mandala needs. So again, not coming from individual perspective, but coming from a mandala perspective, with the mandala once set up, running in the way that it's been set up to run, and of course, because it's a positive way as well, all those things are the very good ones, then the mandala will seek to help us deliver those intentions. And if you like, in the same way that I see the mandala coming in first, it saw the potential for people in the West, or in the UK, as Sangharakshita came in first. People were here who could benefit from the Dharma. In the same way, there are people in our Triratna mandala that needed insight. They were at a stage, if you like, in their practice that needed something else. And so the mandala itself, the guardians, will also go out and they will seek those teachings for us. In that sense, they will speak to the people who are open to hearing them and able to. It will actually send them out and get them back in, you know, for all sorts of things that we need, if you like. If it's not available, they will ideally try and do it. Now, of course, you know, within the mandala, some of that might be rejected. I mean, you know, that's this interest, you know, it doesn't all work because most people can't see what the mandala needs necessarily. So they're not seeing it from that perspective. They're seeing it from a more individual perspective, or from,
yes,
I don't know, more institutional perspective.
That's very interesting. Or maybe they see what is striving to come into the mandala from in a destructive light, and can't see that it is something, well, just using your mandala picture, if you like, that it is a part that needs to come into the kaleidoscope, as it were. Yeah,
it's part of the pattern that we need. That's right, part of the pattern that we need at the moment. That's exactly how I actually see it. Yes, and I think it must be something about being able to gain that overall perspective, and maybe if talking about mandala principle helps people understand that, you know, the bigger picture of that, then I think that could be really important. Because I mean, I think for me, it's like, I think with the Bodhisattva sort of wish, the vow, and the desire to benefit all beings, certainly my own individual practice, you know, very much had that interconnectedness and a welcome to all beings. Of course, all beings did come, it's the other stories. I can see why, for me, if you like, you know, I'm very sensitive to the idea of including all beings, literally, within our mandala too. So that's a part for me that I think that I very much chime with, and if you like, maybe the guardians also have been talking to me about that. So, and I'm sure there's other examples we could think about ourselves if we think of our place in the mandala, and you know, the particular intentions, heart wish, the founding things that were there, that actually is important to us.
Oh yes, I see that each person brings in a different quality or value in that way, or could do potentially. And I've certainly seen that inclusivity with you, right from, well, years and years ago. You've always had that bias, I would say, positively.
Yes, working in Sudan, bringing in all the neighbourhood in Bethnal Green. That's right, coming in Sudan. That's right.
They certainly did come in. So going back to, you mentioned the 7 papers, and you saw that as, well, you mentioned it very briefly. How did that impact on the mandala in your view?
Yeah, so that's right. I think understanding, if we start to understand the mandala as it was originally set up, that actually with those intentions, those desires, actually we have this huge broad base, as I said, to draw on, which is our real strength, and I think our real attraction, what draws people in, and it does draw people into Triratna all the time, ongoingly, was that the 7 papers and the sort of downgrading, as it seemed to be, of Padmasambhava, of our lineage, understanding the place of our lineage, and then seemed like the closing down of avenues of practice or ways that we understood, all of that very much is, if you like, moving away from those original heart intentions of the mandala. So if we actually see that, a sort of real understanding of that, and what in effect was called a refounding of the order, we'll actually realise that we can't actually do that. You can't actually refound the order. You could only refound the order in the sense if there was, you know, virtually 100% agreement. And in a way, in our mandala, it is such a complex mandala, and you know, in a way, any spiritual movement is, to entirely think of a refounding. It just doesn't make any sense. You can't do it. The mandala is set up, it's running. You can't completely change. You can't sort of substantially change that. So the people, to the degree that people see themselves as part of a refounding of the order and agree with the 7 papers and all those ideas and understandings of our movement, is the degree to which they are actually stepping out of the original mandala. So when this sort of like struck me, it shocked me really. That first it was, you know, it was quite a shock in a way.
Yes, you've already outlined what you feel that the order was founded on. The order mandala was founded on by Sangharakshita, originally the equanimical, the coming to the West, all those aspects. So, what in the 7 papers contradicts that? Then, what would constitute? I know they called it a refounding of the order. When writing the first paper, What is the Western Buddhist Order? But what in them would you say contradicts the original mandala?
It is the sense that I'll talk about symbolically, just by calling it a refounding and by putting those papers out. In a sense, that's all you need to do on one level. So on that symbolic, energetic level, by doing that, that actually causes the problems.
Okay.
By setting an intention to do that is actually what causes the problems in the mandala. So that was what was making sense to me afterwards. So realizing that people are constructing another mandala, if you like, they're constructing another mandala, and they're sort of like stepping or putting their energies out into this other mandala, is the degree to which we've also got the real difficulties within our Triratna mandala and order. As it made sense to me then that how difficult it was to communicate with some of the people who are behind the 7 papers and refounding, because if they're busily constructing another mandala, if they're part of something else, then obviously it's not going to be as easy. The communication's not flowing through the mandala. They've got their own guardians, they've got their own intentions, they've got their own way of being, if you like. And we can only step in their mandala to the degree to which we actually coincide with their own intentions that they've set up now.
May I just make a couple of observations around that? Because yes, I do see where you're coming from with that. And yet I can imagine that even though they in the 1990s and the refounding of Triratna, and you seem to see some relevance there for impacts on the mandala. And I'd like to know more about your feeling about that, particularly as from the angle of refounding, given that Subhuti himself mentioned at Adhisthana recently in a talk, What is the Western Buddhist Order Revised? That to change something significantly in Triratna, you'd have to have the majority agreement from the rest of the order. You'd have to have the vast, if not total, agreement. And just aware that, those things were brought in the 90s very much without anyone's, without referring to anyone, really.
Yes, I think that's quite interesting, as you say, with Subhuti talking about the majority of the order needing to give permission for changes. And I think there is this sort of growing realization, not from the mandala principle, not from the understandings I'm coming from, but if you like, from that lived experience, the order has just not come together. We've not been able to come together around the 7 papers, around that idea of refounding. So I think that's true. And I think when I realise, if we understand that from the mandala principle, it's not possible to change that original mandala. It runs, if you like, from those original intentions, from the heart wish. It's seeking to deliver that, through us, with us, energetically. Then, people who are constructing a new mandala, then in effect, as their energies are being put into this new mandala, then they are to that degree stepping out of the original mandala. So it's not possible to form a commonality, a purpose with 2 different mandalas. So that's the underlying structure. And I think
so just to stop you there a minute, so are you saying that with the refounding and with the content of the 7 papers, it was in effect creating a new mandala from the original that Sangharakshita founded?
Yes, that's right. That's what's happening. It's that the energies are no longer staying in the original mandala, but there's an attempt to form something else, form another mandala with new intentions, if you like, with a different focus, literally a whole different way of being to a certain degree. And I think when I first realised that, I was quite shocked in a way. It was a little bit shocking to think, oh gosh, yes, what's happening is not actually within the original mandala. It's not, It's creating something else. And that makes total sense of the confusion within the mandala, of us not really knowing what's going on. There's a real lack of clarity because something else is being constructed. And, you know, it's not including the majority of us. I do believe the majority of the order is still in the original mandala. And so there's this deep confusion about what's happening, and inability to form a commonality around these new proposals, this sort of whole new way of being in the order. And it makes sense of the lack of ease in communication. So many people, myself included, have not been able to get easily in communication, you know, particularly people around Adhisthana or around taking the lead, you know, with the 7 papers. And that makes total sense, because if they're in another mandala, then, if you like, communications are not. It's like trying to speak, you know, in 2 different towns. You know, it's like, yes, we might have the telephone, you know, but we might have a road, you know, connecting us, but actually we're still sort of one side, as it were, rather than the other. So it's not actually that easy to be in this direct, you know, heart-to-heart communication, if you like, on this other energetic level.
Can you say a little bit more specifically what puts us on other sides of the road, if you like? You've already spoken about what created the original, what went into creating the original mandala.
So if you like, I'd probably speak about it that sort of symbolically, again, that's energetically. The mandala, if you like, it runs on the basis of symbols as well. So its energy, if you like, is tied up symbolically. And you know, we're all holding that, but generally that's this level that people are not so aware of, or in effect in the West, in a way we downplay really the roles of symbols. We don't understand energy and symbols as actually being this sort of vital living force, part of the vital living force that we all share. And so there's a lack of understanding that what we do, if we manipulate symbols, that what we do could have you know, more negative consequences. We don't think they're going to have a negative consequence necessarily on anything. So if you understand words as symbols, you know, which has been understood down the centuries, traditionally words are symbols as well, then actually using the term refounding, for instance, has a huge symbolic effect, because you can't do that in the mandala, you know, and we're saying this is what's happening, and the mandala, you know, it's not going to recognize that. It's not part of the original mandala to do that. In the same way, just as calling, you know, Padmasambhava a figure of inspiration, the sound of that for us, symbolically resonating, as it were, implies that he's no longer, you know, at the heart of our mandala, no longer has this central role within the mandala. And indeed, you know, on our, as it were, official refuge tree, Padmasambhava, you know, is no longer at the centre, and the Buddha's at the centre of that. So this has an effect. In a way, there would have been less effect if we'd just continued with that understanding. We said that actually Padmasambhava is the Buddha in that position, or the Buddha in that position is Padmasambhava. Then there's no need actually to change the figure. It's actually understanding. We can have, you know, the figure who resonates with us, Yadama Buddha or Bodhisattva, is in that place. And so there was no need to actually do that. But by doing that, by saying that, by, as it were, downgrading those connections, then symbolically that's had an effect, an effect on the mandala as well. So it's made the mandala destabilized. It's actually created confusion, created difficulties, which are still in place. You know, we're still having those problems within order.
Yes, the 7 papers were also trying to clarify what was essential in Sangharakshita's teachings, and maybe also that contributed to the refocusing and different energies going. I don't know. I'm not. How did that impact on you?
No, that's right. That's part of it too. Is by putting the focus on Sangharakshita as the individual, as it were, as the sort of sole focus for us in the movement. I don't think it's helpful either for Sangharakshita personally, or actually us as an order. If you like, it's an attempt to close down, or symbolically it's closing down, then the role of the whole lineage, which, as I've been saying, is this huge, broad, ecumenical lineage of, and I do experience it. I experience it as living energy, as currents of spiritual energy, which I've talked about to many people over the years. That's very much part of us, part of the original mandala. But in effect, again, this construction of a new way of understanding and a refounding of the order is actually symbolically and literally, following from that symbolism having an effect, is restrictive. So the new mandala is being constructed with a much more restricted understanding, and it holds a different base, if you like. And so, you know, this is a problem, if you like. This is a problem. What are we actually going to do? And it's a problem for us because, as I said earlier, we can't find commonality around that. How do we come together, actually? Which, you know, I want us to. I think most people want us to. But some of those people calling for commonality are just not realising that they are the people who are causing the problems. So this is like the irony. This is the irony for me, you know, is that, you know, the things that they are doing are the very things that are causing the difficulties. Such as,
the things you've already mentioned. Anything else that you can think of that has created that?
I think it's primarily, I mean, I think it's around the sort of splits as well, quite unhelpfully, I think. There's sort of cause for splits that we've heard around from Adhisthana.
Yes.
The same way, I think that's part of an unconscious sort of understanding of what's already happened. So if you like, those people themselves unconsciously recognise that they have split away, as it were, you know, that they are forming something different. They're moving away from that original mandala. And so on those inner levels, you know, they are aware of it, if you like. And so there's a recognition, but it's not being understood and recognised, you know, literally again on this more surface level, this embodied level. So I think it's, you know, it's really for them to understand, just hopefully try to understand what is happening. And I'm hoping, you know, this way of talking, this way of understanding will help people actually see what's going on. I don't know. I'm still optimistic. You know, I'm open to communication. Most of us are open to that communication in our experience. So I'm hoping that we can actually get into that dialogue.
It's a fascinating way of looking at the polarizations that there have been a lot of polarizations I've seen in the last year in discussions in the broader community as well as order. Where it seemed people are coming at such odds to one another in terms of, you know, what they believe Triratna is, what they believe Buddhism is, and it's just another what you're bringing in, which is this sort of two mandalas, the original and a newly formed one. It's just quite another take on that. But then how do you deal with that on an energetic, or maybe that's for another discussion, but do you see that being able to be repaired, and do you see that people will have to split, or will, you know, how do you see that potentially?
I mean, I'm hoping there's no need actually to split. I mean, if you like, the original mandala is really strong. It's functioning, it's running, it's got this big current of energy that we said is bringing all sorts of people into Triratna all the time. The mandala is very strong and healthy on that one level, if you like. But on that level, actually, of effectively working, then that's what's more difficult. And if you like, there is a degree of uproar. She said that polarization, you know, and things are happening. If you like, I think I said earlier when we were talking about the construction of a mandala, that how most people experience difficulty in the mandala is emotionally. So most people don't see it energetically. They don't sort of see the things in that sort of same way that I do, but it will be disturbing emotionally. So the mandala calls to us and speaks to us, as it were, emotionally. And this sort of lack of clarity, the lack of clarity comes from the center of the mandala, you know, not communication, not happening from the center of the mandala in the way that it should be. The confusion, because of creating another mandala, causes this confusion from the center of the mandala, as was there, institutional levels, if you like, the center of our mandala institutionally. There is this big confusion because of what's been happening and so on. But I think, yes, we can repair the mandala. And I think, that's a whole other long conversation. And part of that is because, it's within my own practice that I'm understanding this. So it's levels of practice that I have to engage with and ways of working with that, which takes time. You know, I wouldn't be talking from just an intellectual point of view. When I'm talking, all of this that I'm talking about is coming from my experience. So reflection, meditation, understanding, experience. It's all experiential. It's not me just having an idea that I want to talk about. So that's the basis that I'm I'm sort of speaking in the videos. But yes, I mean, the people who are constructing new mandala need to really understand that, need to understand what's happening, and need to actually, hopefully, maybe, they can reflect, we can meditate together in some degree, that there's a way of understanding that, because it's hard. I think we can get caught up in the emotions and in intellectual ideas, and it's coming back to our practice, if you like, on these other levels, on a more intuitive level, and just try and understand what's actually happened and what's the best way forward. So yes, I still have confidence that we can bring the mandala back together, if you like. But yes, that will be a whole other conversation.
Okay. Shall we leave it there? Or
I think that I think that's probably quite good.